Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Jeff Fishing Vlog. This week, I'm really excited to bring you one of my favorite fishing partners, one of my best friends in life, my little brother, Jesse Fishin, where we talk about when we really first started to get to fishing together and some of our other favorite stories. At the end of the video, I'm going to bring you a tip that I've caught a bunch of fish off of. I've caught fish off of it in bigger tournaments. You know, it's really one of my go-to techniques when I'm actually out trying to catch the big fish or the really nice fish and I'm fishing grass. And then also, I want to go and take the time to mention that we'd reached 400 views and over 1,000 minutes watched. And it just kind of blows me away that this has taken off the way it has, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And at some point, maybe next year, I want to hit a good milestone, but we will look into doing giveaways and that sort of thing. But anyway, I want to take the time to say thank each and every one of you. I appreciate you all, and I hope you enjoy this episode. All right, so of all those times, do you have any fishing trips or any lakes that actually come to mind?
Yeah, it'd be this place behind this factory. It was called Wash and Cully.
And it was a concrete factory. They used the lake to dump some of their concrete. I believe that's what they used it for. And as far as I know, it was okay for us to fish back there. We were always fishing back there. Caught a ton of skinny bass out of that lake.
Oh
yeah. And when we fished it, originally we were using worms and night crawlers and minnows, and we were fishing with really just the least expensive equipment we could find. Yep. And we're sitting. Well, we moved to the spinning reels pretty quick. We wasn't really fishing Zepco push buttons. We were fishing spinning reels. Yeah. But on the one side, they had this nice area we could fish. It was a cove. Plenty of room on the bank to fish. Get chased off by geese every now and then. Shout out to Christopher for chasing the geese back a few times. But anyway, so we would always go to this spot and fish, and we would fish some other spots along that way. But across the lake, there's this mountain, and you would see fish jumping over there all the time. It was definitely where the deeper water was. And to go over there, we wasn't carrying minute buckets.
Yeah, you had to be pretty adventurous to go on the other side. It was really steep. Footing wasn't great.
I was a little thinner back then. I think we all were.
Yeah, I was definitely thinner back then.
But, and part of that was, I think Dad was egging us on because he would always tell stories about him and Johnny Dillon fishing together. Johnny Dillon would come to Kentucky when we were living in Drakesboro. Johnny Dillon was living in Northwest Indiana with my Aunt Sherry. So they would come down on vacation, and Johnny Dillon, when he was there to fish, he did not care about anything else that was going on in the world. He was going to fish. Dad had told us a story one time, and Johnny Dillon really was like this fishing legend to us, almost the same as Bill Dance, but you could actually see the guy in person.
Yeah.
But anyway, he said they had got in the truck. They went to go to the lake. It was like first thing in the morning. The truck breaks down, and Dad's standing there. He's like, nobody had cell phones back then. This was back in the early 80s. And Dad's like, Johnny, what do you want to do? And Johnny says, let's take the boat out, and we'll take the boat to the lake, and we'll worry about the truck whenever we're done fishing. So there he said, there they were, 9 o'clock at night. They fished all day, all morning, all afternoon, all day. And then there they were at 9 o'clock in the night, putting a starter on that truck, fixing that truck, trying to get it started. So in that spirit, in the Johnny Dillon spirit, we decided we were going to climb that rock wall. And in order to do it, we knew we needed to switch over to using lures, which, as a fisherman, you kind of progress to using lures, I think.
Oh, yeah. Actually, that lake is the first time I've ever successfully caught a fish with a lure.
Was it the lizards or was it the worms?
It was a weedless worm, and it looked like just a normal worm, about about 4 inches.
Wasn't it the one that Uncle Mike was pushing on us? The one that came pre-rigged. It had the 3 hooks on
Yep.
it. Had the little wire to cover the hooks.
Yep. And for some reason it moved a certain way, kind of slithered. And I've tried other weedless worms, and it just never moved the same way that worm did.
Even now, whenever I get a little bit of nostalgia to me, I'll fish with one of those worms, and they still seem to be pretty productive. You know, and I've always kind of thought of it as an introductory lure, but it still plays.
Pretty much work it any way you want, and it seems to work.
And then we moved on to the lizards, I believe, because we got really heavy into fishing the lizards, Texas rigged, and that lake didn't have a lot of grass, so we were able to fish the bottoms. So do you remember when we got to the other side, there basically was only one really good fishing spot?
Yep, a couple of trees around it.
Well, I was thinking of the spot that actually had the cinder blocks there. You remember where the cinder blocks were stacked? And we would kept putting the worm. We were using the Canadian night crawlers in neon green, and these were live bait. I'm sure many of you have seen the neon green Canadian night crawlers. I don't know what they do to them, but we decided to take some live bait with us one time, and every time we would pitch down to this one area, we would get it right down to the right spot, and the target was really small. They, that fish wasn't coming out and chasing it. And I know it was a good sized fish, but it would come and suck that worm up. It would go underneath that concrete block. We'd try and set the hook. Either it'd spit it out or we'd break our line. Just every time, man, like that. It was really tough.
Probably the reason why that fish was so big. He's smart.
Now, for me, fishing all these public lakes, some of the fun really is getting to show off a little bit while I'm out fishing. I remember me and Lonnie Knight fishing Lake Ed at one time, and we got turned on to catfish and bass. And there was a bunch of people there. There were some people there fishing, and nobody was catching stuff, but like we were in this cove, and I was on one side and Lonnie was on the other side, and I'm gonna have to call him out. You know, that's my boy, but I'm gonna still call him out. I'm over here catching my bass, and he's calling me over there to his side to take off his catfish for him. Granted, you know, everybody had fished when they were kids, but not everybody knew what the hell they was doing. Yeah. You know, so we were still learning, and I knew what I was doing to some extent. So. But it was fun because we drew a crowd, and there for about 10 minutes, man, we were just, it was like we were on top of the world. Do you have any moments like that?
It was during the family reunion. I was probably in middle school. I was using that same weedless worm. I had a lot of confidence in it, and I caught 3 bass in about 5 minutes, just really quick. And one of them ended up being a 3-pound bass. I was pretty fucking proud of that. It was probably one of the biggest bass I've ever caught.
You had a lot of people, a lot of the uncles and aunts, and probably a lot of the little. Our family reunions tend to be fairly large. When my grandmother passed away a few years ago, on the obituary, it was 98 kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, great-great-grandkids total. So there was a pretty big legacy there.
Grandma had 12 kids.
Well, she did have a good base to start with there, so yeah. All right, welcome back. And now I've got this trick and I'm telling you, when I worked at MPW, we've done a lot of traveling. And one time we were working in Tennessee, and at the hotel I ran into Alton Jones. Now, many of you may not know who Alton Jones is, but he's a Bass Pro. His son's a Bass Pro today. And this is almost 20 years ago, maybe not quite 20 years ago. And at the time, I was really getting into tube bait fishing. And so I'm walking up. Let me just jump around as much as possible telling my stories. I've always done it my entire life. So I'm walking up the stairs to go to my room, and it was one of those cheaper hotels where your doors are on the outside. And there's this guy standing up against the balcony there. And he's just got a bag of worms like this, and he's just standing there doing this to him. He's like, "Oh, hey buddy, you gonna go fishing in the morning?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got a big tournament." And I knew I'd kind of recognized him. You know, I wasn't 100% positive because I'm a big Bassmasters fan, but I'm not such a big Bassmasters fan that I know who every single one of these guys are on site. I'm just not that kind of fan for anything, really. Anyway, so I'd recognized him later in the magazine. That's how I know it was Alton Jones. So he's sitting there, looking at his worms. I said, so you just checking out your worms or whatever? He said, "Well, I do, I feel them, and I'm just trying to get a feel for them, but it also helps to break up that plastic a little bit." I was like, I never really quite thought of it that way, but hey, when his livelihood is on the line, he's using every trick in his book. So I'd mentioned to him, I said, lately I've been fishing a lot of tube baits, and I think I kind of got a way that I really like hooking them up that's really different than what a lot of people are doing. He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, at the time, a lot of the areas I was fishing had grass, except for the grass was maybe just a few feet under the top level of the water. I keep missing how to word that. I'll figure it out one of these days, or I'll just stand here and stutter on video, one or the other. And the problem is I would get the tube out, and maybe it wouldn't drop quite as fast as I would like for it to. But to use a Texas rig, that weight's going down, and then that worm's falling down, just a little faster than I would like. And I really wasn't using the weighted hooks at the time, but I'd bought a big bag of split shots that was on clearance, right? So this is what I done. Is I would take my hook and I would run it through my tube like this. I'd bring it out the bottom. I'd go ahead and bring it around this way. I want to get all that stuff on there nice and straight. Okay. Then I would take my split shots. See? And I would use one or two depending on, how I was feeling that day, how fast I wanted them to sink or swim. I would get them split shots in there nice and good. And of course, like you see me just rub my fingers all over this bait and stuff, I do use a lot of scent. And especially in a situation like this where I know I have to handle the bait an extra amount, I'm going to put scent, whether it's crawfish or shad scent on there. And the thing is you can barely hear that stuff rattling around in there, but it is. And when it falls, it's going to give it just a really odd fall. Because if the weight was here, the bait's going to fall straight. More or less, depending on how much slack line it has and how much your line gives it the resistance. But taking that out of account, it gives it just enough weight to where it's going to fall slow, and it's not going to fall exactly the way it would in a bait. And it may not fall exactly the same way every time, depending on what those split shots do in here. And I'm telling you, Alton was really fascinated by it, and he'd asked me where I'd heard it from, and I told him I just came up with it because at the time I didn't have any of those hooks that had the weight on the hook, and I didn't want to fish Texas rig. And he told me, he said, a lot of the bass pros use that technique, and almost nobody talks about it. That they're not talking about it in the magazines, they're not talking about it on the shows. I was just really always kind of proud of myself for figuring that out. But it was just a necessity. It's not that I was so smart, it was that I had the extra split shots, and it was just a necessity. It's just the way I wanted to do it. So anytime you can come up with something, yeah, you might as well try it. You never know what you'll run into. All the time, I've got a brother and a wife that likes to brag about using a bobber and a lizard and catching bass on it, and it's the goofiest thing you ever seen. But like I said, sometimes you can catch bass, you can catch a fish on a night crawler or a gummy worm, and sometimes they're just going to hit no matter what. So I think that's about all the storytelling we're going to do for one evening. We're actually going to go enjoy our time with our wives. I don't get to see Jesse very often.
Travel about 300 miles to get here.
So, and you know what Dad says, and you know what I've been saying, but when is the best time to fish?
wherever you can go.
You guys have a good evening and catch me some fish.
Bye, everybody.